I learned how to disappear long before I learned how to fight back, not because I was invisible, but because people decided I didn't need to be heard. In my family, voices were loud and fast. Opinions crashed into each other like waves, and whoever spoke the strongest won. I was never the strongest voice in the room. I was the one who waited, the one who listened, the one who softened every sentence so no one felt uncomfortable. I thought that made me good. When decisions were made, I was already agreeing before anyone asked. When problems appeared, I fixed them quietly. When someone needed support, I gave it without counting the cost. I believed kindness would protect me. I believed loyalty meant safety. Instead, it taught them something dangerous, that I would bend. They talked over me during dinners. They finished my sentences incorrectly. They laughed when I tried to explain myself, not cruelly, just dismissively. Like I was background noise they'd gotten used to. You're too emotional, they said. You think too much, they added. You'll understand later, they promised. Later never came. I became the easy one, the dependable one, the one who never caused trouble, the one who always adjusted. And slowly, without realizing it, I stopped asking for space in my own life. I told myself it was maturity. When I got engaged, I believed things would change. I believed love would finally give me a voice that mattered. My fiancé listened to me, or at least I thought he did. He smiled when I spoke, held my hand, nodded at my dreams. I mistook attention for respect. My best friend stood beside me through everything. She knew my fears, my insecurities, the way I doubted myself even on good days. She promised she'd always protect me. I trusted her without hesitation, and my mother said she was proud of me. She hugged me longer than usual, told me I was lucky, told me I had a good heart. I didn't hear the warning hidden in those words. I didn't realize good heart was her way of saying easy to influence. I shared my plans openly: marriage, a future, a business idea I had been working on quietly for years. I spoke about it with hope in my voice, unaware that hope can sound like weakness to the wrong people. They listened. Really. Listened. Not to support me, but to study me. At family gatherings, I noticed how conversations shifted when I entered the room, how looks were exchanged when I spoke too confidently, how my ideas were praised, and then repeated by someone else louder, as if they hadn't just come from me. When I corrected them, I was told I was being sensitive. So I stopped correcting. I smiled more, apologized faster, shrunk myself just enough to stay welcome. Inside, something was slowly breaking, but I didn't recognize it yet. Pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers until silence feels normal. The night everything change felt ordinary at first. Laughter echoed through the house. Plates clinked. Someone turned the TV up too loud. I went to the kitchen for water, barefoot, tired, emotionally full in a way that made me careless. That's when I heard it. Soft crying. I froze. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was controlled, like someone trying not to be heard. My chest tightened as I followed the sound down the hallway. Every step heavier than the last. The door to my mother's room was slightly open. I didn't mean to listen, but then I heard my best friend's voice shaking. I don't know how much longer I can do this, she whispered. My mother responded calmly. Too calmly. Be patient, she said. Some things require sacrifice. I felt my heart stumble. What about her? My best friend asked quietly. There was a pause. A long one. Then my mother spoke words that cut deeper than shouting ever. Could she understand, she said. She always does. I stood there, unseen, breath trapped in my lungs. That was the moment I realized something terrible. They didn't see my kindness as strength. They saw it as permission, and in that silence, in that hallway, with my name spoken like an inconvenience instead of a person, I felt something inside me change shape, not anger yet. That night I didn't confront anyone. I stood there in the hallway, barefoot on cold tiles, listening to my own heartbeat pound louder than their whispers. My body wanted to move, to step forward, to demand answers, but my mind did something else instead. It memorized everything. I went back to my room quietly, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed as if nothing had happened. My hands were shaking, but my face felt strangely calm. Shock has a way of numbing you before it teaches you how to hurt, I told myself. There had to be an explanation. There always is when you're desperate enough to believe one. The next morning, everyone acted normal, too normal. My best friend hugged me tightly like she always did. My mother asked if I'd slept well. My fiancé kissed my forehead and asked about my plans for the day. Their voices were familiar, their faces unchanged. And yet, everything felt staged. I started noticing details I'd ignored before. How conversations stopped when I entered the room, how my fiancé and my best friend shared glances that lingered a second too long. How my mother spoke for me even when I was standing right there. She's fine with it, my mother would say. She doesn't mind, she'd add, smiling. I did mind. I just wasn't consulted. I began to listen more than I spoke. I stayed quiet at dinners. I pretended to scroll through my phone while absorbing every tone shift, every pause, every carefully chosen word. Secrets have weight. And suddenly the house felt heavier. One afternoon I came home earlier than expected. The living room was empty, but voices floated in from the kitchen. I recognized them instantly. My fiancé laughed softly. It's complicated, he said. My mother replied, firm but gentle. Life always is. You just need to think practically. I leaned against the wall, my chest tightening. What about her feelings? He asked. There it was again. I paused. She's emotional, my mother said. She adjusts. That word echoed in my head like an insult dressed as advice. I walked away before they could see me. My legs felt weak, but my mind was suddenly sharp. Every memory replayed itself differently now. Every moment I'd been dismissed, minimized, reassured instead of respected. They weren't protecting me, they were managing me. Later that evening, my best friend sat beside me on the couch. She rested her head on my shoulder like she had 100 times before. You're quiet lately, she said. I forced a smile. Just tired, she hesitated. I felt it in her body. Marriage changes things, she added carefully. Not everything works out the way we imagine? I looked at her then, really looked. Her eyes avoided mine. What do you mean? I asked softly. She shook her head quickly. Nothing. Forget it. But I couldn't forget. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every overheard conversation, every whispered word. My chest hurt not from anger, but from grief. Grief for the version of myself that trusted too easily. Grief for the future I'd already started losing without a vote. I realized something terrifying. Decisions were being made about my life. Without me in the room, the next few days confirmed it. Wedding plans shifted without discussion. Dates changed. Guest lists edited. Even my business idea, my idea, was suddenly being discussed as something better handled by others. You don't need the stress, my fiancé said casually. Focus on the wedding, I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. Because something inside me was learning, watching, connecting dots, I stopped trying to correct them. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped asking for reassurance. I started observing patterns, my mother guiding conversations, my fiancé leaning on her opinions, my best friend positioned carefully between us, always helpful, always involved, always present when decisions were made. They weren't villains. That was the hardest part. They believed they were doing the right thing, for themselves. One evening, as I passed the hallway again, I heard my name mentioned in a whisper. I slowed my steps, heart pounding. She won't fight it, my fiancé sighed quietly. She never does. My mother responded, calm and confident. Exactly. That was the moment something inside me hardened, not into hatred, into clarity. I wasn't weak. I had been trained to be quiet, and training can be undone. I went to my room, closed the door, and looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked the same, but my eyes didn't. For the first time, I didn't see someone fragile. I saw someone underestimated. And they had no idea what that would cost them. If you want next. The truth didn't arrive loudly. It came quietly, disguised as concern, wrapped in soft voices and careful smiles. And by the time I understood it, I was already standing outside my own life that morning. My mother asked me to sit with her. Just a conversation, she said, patting the couch beside her. My fiancé was already there, sitting straight, hands folded, serious. That's when my stomach dropped. This wasn't casual. This was planned. We've been talking. My mother began, eyes gentle but firm, about what's best for everyone. Everyone except me. I thought. I waited for him to speak. He didn't. He kept his eyes on the floor like a guilty child. What about us? I asked. My voice sounded calm. That scared me more than panic would have. My mother sighed. You've always been sensitive, she said softly. Marriage needs stability. I looked at her, stunned. She means, my fiancé added carefully, that you've been under a lot of pressure lately. Double quotes pressure. From loving too deeply. From trusting too much? And my best friend? I asked suddenly. The room shifted. She's practical, my mother said quickly. Strong. She balances things. I felt something crack inside my chest. Balance. That single quote's what they were calling replacement now. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. So you discussed my flaws, I said. My future, my marriage without me. My fiancé looked up. We didn't want to hurt you. I laughed. A short, hollow sound. You already did? I walked out before they could explain more. Explanations felt insulting now. In my room, I locked the door and slid down against it. My breath came uneven, like I'd been running for miles. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to remember when I'd stopped being enough that afternoon. My best friend knocked. Can we talk? She asked through the door. I opened it. Her eyes were red. She looked guilty. I never meant for this to happen, she whispered. That sentence destroyed the last piece of doubt I had. So it is happening, I said. She nodded, tears falling freely now. They just think it makes sense. Makes sense. Love isn't supposed to make sense. It's supposed to make you choose. And you? I asked quietly. What do you think? She hesitated. That hesitation was louder than any confession. I didn't ask for it, she said. But I didn't stop it either. There it was, the moment I understood that loyalty has limits, especially when opportunity knocks. I stepped back. Leave, I said. She reached for me. I'm sorry. I closed the door before she could touch me. That night, I cried silently into my pillow, not because I was losing him, but because I was losing myself in the process. Every memory felt contaminated. Every promise rewritten. The next day, the house felt different. My fiancé avoided me completely. My mother moved around me like I was fragile glass. My best friend stayed in her room. No one spoke openly because the decision was already made. A week later, my mother finally said the words out loud. Maybe some distance would help, she suggested. For now, distance from my own life. I packed a small bag that night. No arguments, no scenes. Just quiet acceptance, the kind that looks like defeat from the outside, but feels like survival from the inside. As I walked out, I glanced back. Once, they were all there, together. Not one of them stopped me. I didn't realize it then, but that silence was the final confirmation. I hadn't been left behind. I had been replaced. And as the door closed behind me, one thought burned through. The pain. If they could erase me this easily, they would never see me coming when I returned. I didn't leave with dignity. I left with shaking hands, swollen eyes, and a heart that didn't know where to rest anymore. The bus station smelled like dust and old coffee. I sat there with my small bag on my lap, staring at the departure, bored like it might tell me where my life was supposed to go next. No one followed me, no one called. That silence felt heavier than any argument. The city I moved to didn't know my story. That was its only kindness. I rented a tiny room with peeling paint and a window that barely opened. At night, traffic noise replaced the voices I'd lost. I hated it first. Then I realized noise meant I wasn't alone with my thoughts. The first weeks were brutal. I woke up reaching for my phone, forgetting there was no one left to text. I cooked too much food out of habit. I caught myself rehearsing explanations no one had asked for. Some days I didn't leave the room at all. I kept replaying moments, searching for the exact second I stopped being enough. Was it when I cried too easily? When I trusted too hard? When I loved without bargaining? I blamed myself until my chest hurt. One night, sitting on the floor, back against the bed, I asked myself a question I'd never dared to before. What if I wasn't weak? What if I was just surrounded by people who benefited from my softness? That thought scared me. It meant the problem wasn't something I needed to fix. It meant I needed to change where I stood. I found a job at a small office, nothing glamorous, long hours, low pay, but it gave my days structure. It gave my pain somewhere to hide during business hours. At work, no one knew I was someone's daughter, someone's fiancée, someone's almost wife. I was just me, and that was terrifying and freeing. I started observing myself the way you observe a stranger. How I apologized too quickly. How I shrank my opinions to keep peace. How I smiled even when something hurt. I didn't like what I saw, so I began making small changes. I stopped explaining myself unnecessarily. I stopped answering calls that left me drained. I started saying no without adding a reason. Each boundary felt like learning a new language, awkward, clumsy, but powerful. Some nights, loneliness crept in quietly. I'd see couples laughing on the street below my window and feel that familiar ache, not for him, but for the girl I used to be. The one who believed love was always safe, I cried for her. Then I promised I wouldn't abandon her again. Months passed. I saved money. I took online courses late at night, my eyes burning, but my mind alive for the first time in years. I started writing thoughts, memories, truths I'd swallowed for too long. The words were messy, angry, honest. They felt like mine. One evening, my mother called. I stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I wasn't punishing her. I was protecting myself. I heard through relatives that the wedding plans were moving fast, that my best friend was stressed, that my ex looked conflicted. I laughed when I heard that. Because conflict is a luxury you feel before you choose, not after. By the time winter came, something inside me had settled. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed. It no longer begged, it observed. I stood taller without realizing it. My voice stopped trembling when I spoke. I stopped needing approval like oxygen. One night I caught my reflection in a shop window. I barely recognized her. She looked composed. Not happy, not healed, but awake. And that's when I understood something important. They didn't break me when they replaced me. They freed me from a version of myself that would have kept accepting less than she deserved. As I walked home that night, cold air biting my cheeks, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I heard you're doing well. We should talk. I stared at the screen, heart suddenly calm instead of racing. Because for the first time, I knew this. I wasn't running anymore, and whoever wanted access to my life next would have to earn it. Success didn't arrive loudly. It came quietly, like sunlight creeping across a floor you forgot was dirty. One small win at a time. One ordinary day stacked on another until my life looked nothing like the one they thought I'd disappear into. I didn't announce my progress to anyone. I learned early that growth is fragile when exposed too soon, so I protected it. I let people assume I was still recovering, still lost. Still soft let them dot my days filled up in ways that felt unfamiliar but solid. Mornings with purpose. Evenings with tired satisfaction instead of emotional exhaustion. I upgraded apartments, not dramatically, but deliberately. A place with windows that actually opened. A kitchen that felt like mine. For the first time, my space reflected who I was becoming. At work, people started listening when I spoke. Not because I demanded it, but because I no longer filled the silence with self-doubt. I noticed how confidence changes the temperature of a room. How calm certainty can be louder than desperation ever was. One afternoon, my manager called me in. We're expanding, he said, and I want you leading the new team. I nodded like it was normal. Inside. Something clicked. Not excitement. Validation. Walked home that evening slower than usual, letting the moment settle into my bones. This wasn't luck. This wasn't sympathy. This was earned. That night, I opened my laptop and looked through old photos. I didn't feel anger. I felt distance, like watching a movie where you understand the character but you don't want to be her anymore. People from my past tried to re-enter my life softly, casual messages, neutral check-ins, as if history could be edited with politeness. How are you? Long time? Hope you're well. I didn't respond, not because I was bitter, because access is a privilege, not a memory. Then, unexpectedly, he appeared, not my ex, someone else. A man from another department I'd exchanged polite hellos with before. He started joining me for coffee breaks. Never intrusive, never rushed, just present. He asked questions and waited for real answers. One day, he said something that stayed with me. You don't explain yourself much? I shrugged. I used to explain everything, and I realize people who care don't need footnotes. He smiled, not impressed, not intimidated, just respectful. That was new. Weeks passed. Conversations deepened slowly. No grand gestures, no promises, no emotional intensity disguised as connection, and that's when it hit me. This was what safety felt like. Not fireworks, not obsession, not urgency. Just steadiness. I didn't rush it. I didn't label it. I let it exist the way healthy things do, without panic. One evening, while walking back from dinner, my phone buzzed again, a message from my sister. We're moving soon. Married life is harder than I thought. I stared at the screen. No apology. No accountability. Just exhaustion seeking comfort from the person she once replaced. I typed a response. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Then I locked my phone and kept walking. Some stories don't deserve a sequel. That night, sitting on my balcony, city lights blinking below, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Pride. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that doesn't need witnesses. I had rebuilt myself in rooms where no one clapped. I had grown without permission. I had learned that being chosen by myself mattered more than being chosen by anyone else. And somewhere between heartbreak and healing, I became someone my past couldn't touch anymore. The man from work texted later, "Are you free this weekend?" I looked at the message carefully, not with fear, not with hunger. With choice. As I typed back, I realized something powerful. This time, I wasn't stepping into love to be saved. I was stepping into it whole, and I had no idea who would be watching. From the shadows, realizing far too late what they'd lost. The first sign was silence breaking, not dramatically. Not all at once. Just small ripples. People who hadn't spoken my name in years suddenly doing it carefully, like testing the weight of it. I noticed it at work first. My promotion became official, then visible. Meetings I used to observe quietly now paused when I entered. People waited for my opinion instead of talking over it. My calendar filled up without me chasing it. Success has a sound. It's not applause. It's doors opening before you knock. One afternoon, a junior colleague leaned over and whispered, "You know, people talk about you, right?" I looked up. About what? How fast you've grown. How composed you are. They say you don't panic. I smiled faintly. They had no idea how much panic it took to get here. That evening, I attended a corporate networking event. Nothing fancy, clean lights, low music, polite conversations layered with ambition. I wore a simple black dress. Nothing loud, nothing apologetic. Confidence doesn't need decoration. As I spoke on a panel about leadership under pressure, I felt grounded. My voice didn't shake. My thoughts didn't scatter. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was simply present. Afterward, people approached me. Compliments. Questions. Business cards. And then a familiar last name, not spoken directly to me, whispered nearby. Careful, curious. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. Later that night, my phone rang. My mother. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. I hadn't blocked her. I just stopped reaching. There's a difference, I answered. Hello? Her voice sounded softer than I remembered, slower, like someone choosing words instead of controlling them. I heard about you, she said. Waited. You're doing well. It wasn't praise. It wasn't pride. It was realization. Double quotes. Yes, I said simply. A pause stretched between us. I could hear a TV in the background. Someone moving dishes. Domestic normalcy. The same world I was once removed from. We were thinking. She began carefully. Maybe you could come over sometime. Dinner. It's been a long time. I didn't respond immediately, because she didn't say sorry. She didn't say I was wrong. She said we were thinking. I'll see, I replied. After I hung up, I felt nothing dramatic. No anger. No ache. Just clarity. Later that week, my sister followed. Her message came late at night. I saw your interview clip online. You look different. I stared at the word different. Yes, that was the point. She continued. Maybe we should catch up. Like old times? Old times. The phrase felt foreign. Like a language I no longer spoke. I didn't reply, not out of cruelty. Out of self-respect. Meanwhile, my life kept expanding. The man from work, now firmly the man in my life, became a steady presence. He never asked intrusive questions about my family, never pushed for access to wounds I'd already healed. One evening, as we cooked together in my apartment, he said casually, "There's a charity gala next month. My company's sponsoring it. Would you come with me?" I froze, not visibly, but internally. Public spaces had always been where my past ambushed me. Are you sure? I asked. He looked at me, confused. Why wouldn't I be? I turned back. To the stove. No reason. But there was a reason. I could feel it. Something aligning. Something preparing to circle back. A few days later, my mother called again. This time, her voice held urgency. We're hosting a small family gathering, she said. Just close people. It would mean a lot if you came. I knew before she finished. They'd seen me, not just surviving, thriving. I'll think about it. I repeated. That night I sat alone, city glowing outside my window, and reflected on the strange shift happening. For years I was the forgotten one, the emotional one. The girl people assumed would struggle quietly forever. Now, they were reaching, not because they missed me, but because they recognized what they lost access to, and the most powerful thing. I didn't need revenge. Life was already correcting the narrative. The gala invitation sat on my desk. My family's dinner invitation echoed in my head. Two worlds I had kept separate for years were inching closer. Collision felt inevitable. As I picked up my phone to our SVP for the event, a new message appeared. From my ex. I didn't expect to see you everywhere lately. We should talk. My chest tightened, not with longing. With finality. I locked my phone, heart steady, breath calm, because this time they weren't meeting the girl they once controlled. They were about to meet the woman who rebuilt herself beyond their reach. And I knew deep down that when our paths finally crossed again, nothing would be the same. The room went quiet the moment I stepped in, not silent, just unsettled. Like a memory had walked back in uninvited. Crystal lights hung low, reflecting ambition and money and people pretending not to stare. The gala was elegant, controlled, curated. I should have felt small once upon a time. I didn't. My husband, steady, calm, unmistakably respected, walked beside me. His hand rested lightly at my back, not guiding, not guarding. Just present. We belonged here. I felt it before I saw them. My mother stood near the center of the room, frozen mid-smile. My sister beside her, fingers gripping a glass too tightly. And then him. My ex. His face drained slowly, like recognition arriving in painful stages. First disbelief, then confusion, then something close to regret. I didn't stop walking. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each step erasing an older version of myself, the girl who apologized too quickly. The girl who swallowed betrayal quietly. That girl didn't exist anymore. Whispers followed us. That's her. She's the one. I didn't know that was her husband. My husband? Leaned in and whispered, "You okay?" I smiled. More than okay. We reached our table. Before I could sit, my mother approached. Her voice trembled. "I didn't know you'd be here." I met her eyes. Calm, unafraid. "You invited me." She nodded, as if remembering too late that actions have consequences. My sister tried to speak. Her lips parted. Nothing came out. Finally, my ex stepped forward. You look incredible, he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I studied him like a closed chapter, familiar, finished. Thank you, I replied politely. No warmth, no bitterness. That hurt him more than anger ever could. My husband extended his hand. I'm Daniel, her husband. The word husband landed hard. Daniel. The name I rebuilt my life around. My ex shook his hand slowly, eyes flicking between us, recalculating everything he thought he knew. I'm glad to finally meet you. Daniel continued, voice smooth. She's remarkable. My mother swallowed. Yes, she was. A moment later, the host tapped the microphone. We'd like to thank our lead sponsor for tonight's event, Daniel Hart. Applause erupted. Daniel squeezed my hand and stepped forward. As he spoke, he thanked his team, his mentors, and then me, my wife, he said clearly, is the reason I understand resilience. Every eye turned toward us. My mother's face collapsed into something unreadable. My sister stared at the floor. My ex looked like he just realized the cost of his choices. I didn't feel victorious. I felt complete. When Daniel returned to my side, I leaned in and whispered, Thank you, he smiled. For what? For choosing me, fully. As the applause faded, I realized something profound. I didn't need them to regret anything because I no longer lived in their shadow. I walked out of that room with my head high, my hand held, and my story finally mine. And for the first time, the past stayed exactly where it belonged.